continue to meddle in my affairs, and your deaths will be long and abhorrent.
Ah, Waycrest Manor. Good to see you again. Let's take a walk through this 5-boss dungeon. This council-type encounter has you facing off against the 3 sisters, Selena, Malady, and Briar. Bosses will only be vulnerable to damage when in possession of the focusing iris. While each one of the sisters possesses the iris, they are going to gain energy every second. First, you're going to want to start by damaging Selena, who will occasionally mind control one of your party members. Be sure to damage them to break them out of the MC. While Selena is active, healers need to be aware that their healing is going to be reduced by 50% due to the aura of apathy. Once Selena hits 50% health, she will drop the iris and Malady will quickly claim it. While Malady is active, players need to make sure that they're constantly moving to keep the aura of dread stacks low. Malady will also occasionally mark players with unstable runic mark. This is a curse that should be dispelled when you can, but in case you don't have a curse dispel in your group, just be sure to spread out. Due to the high amount of rot damage in this phase, and burst damage, and the movement requirement, healers should aim to keep a cooldown banked for when this boss is active. Once again, when Malady hits 50% health, she will drop the iris, and lastly, Briar will claim it. Briar deals physical damage to her attackers while being struck, and the main mechanic here is Jagged Nettles. This deals a massive amount of physical damage and causes the player to be struck to bleed out. The way you remove this debuff is by healing the player above 90% health, so healers, give your balls a tug, and DPS players, for the love of God, use a defensive. Oh, and immunities or Blessing of Protection are great here. Lastly, while the other sisters don't possess the iris, they will just cast bolts at random players. Kick these when you can. Rinse and repeat. The Soulbound Goliath gains 5% increased damage every 2 seconds, stacking permanently. There is a way to remove this buff, but we're going to get to that in a second. During the encounter, I recommend your party stack in melee. This is mainly due to the Soul Thorns mechanic. This will stun a player and can be removed by damaging the thorns or with immunities or stun removals. Once again, another great place for Blessing of Protection. The main tank mechanic here is called Crush. This won't deal much damage early on in the encounter, but can deal some serious damage when the Goliath has a high amount of stacks of Soul Harvest. Once 2 Soul Thorns have happened, this is when I recommend you drop the stacks from the boss. You'll do this by dragging the boss through the fire that is in the arena. Just a tip, tanks should be paying attention for when those fires spawns. You want to use the most recently spawned fire. Now, it's important for healers to be ready for this, since dropping stacks does 2 things. It'll cause pulsing AoE damage to hit your entire party, and will spawn burning souls which fixate players. During this, I recommend pulling the boss away from where the stacks were dropped, since the burning souls move quite slowly. DPS and healers alike need to be very careful here. This is a simple rinse and repeat encounter. Big Boy Raal. This super slim guy is a stationary boss. This is important to keep in mind because if there's no one in melee range, well, he's going to start dealing massive shadow damage to all party members in the room. In terms of tanking mechanics, there isn't really anything you need to know besides staying within melee range and keeping the bile oozlings from hitting your allies. Throughout the encounter, Raal will also cast Tenderize, dealing lethal physical damage to anyone caught in it. This happens in sets of 3 and tends to target random players. Move as a group to try to keep the pattern static. Lastly, Raal will call servants to feed him. DPS players will want to slow and kill these adds. If they make it to the boss, Raal will release Gluttonous Bile after consuming the servant, applying a damage over time impact to all party members, which will stack. This is a pretty easy fight as long as you keep servants under control. Good luck. This is a 2-phase encounter and starts as a single target fight and shifts to a 2-target cleave encounter. You'll start the fight by tagging Lord Waycrest, who will jump into the arena. Starting off the fight, Wasting Strike is the major tank buster that applies a nasty damage over time effect. Tanks, you're going to want to be sure to use active mitigation and a defensive whenever necessary. Prot warriors can spell reflect this for massive damage. Just a little tip. Lord Waycrest will also apply Virulent Pathogen to a random player. This player needs to be sure to spread out and move away from others, and either be dispelled or spot healed. Once the debuff is removed or falls off, be sure to move out of the swirl, or it's going to get reapplied. Throughout the fight, Lady Waycrest, who will remain outside of the arena, will play Discordant Cadenza, which will spawn swirls. Just avoid these. When Lord Waycrest hits 25% health, Lady Waycrest will use Vitality Transfer to full heal Lord Waycrest. You need to bring him down to 25% health 3 times. Once this happens, Lady Waycrest will be at 10% health and will join the arena, casting Racking Cord. This requires a 2 melee kick rotation, but be sure to focus Lord Waycrest since he is extremely dangerous to your tank. This fight ends pretty anticlimactically. Gorak Tul is the true ad control encounter. Gorak Tul will be killed by spawning ads called Death Touch Slavers. You want to make sure that you are defeating these ads as fast as possible. They tend to jump at the furthest player, and then this attack will cleave all nearby party members, so be sure to stay spread out. The Slaver will also cast Death Lens, which will stun the target and deal damage during the channel. You'll want to make sure you're using CCs like stuns, disorients, and displacements to prevent these casts from going off. Now, while the ads can be killed, Gorak Tul will reanimate them through a spell called Dreaded Essence, unless all ads are burned with the alchemical fire provided by our boy Inquisitor Yorick. This is typically a healer's job, but honestly, anyone with a brain and at least one working eye should be able to pick these up and use them appropriately. It's possible to burn 2 ads at once, but I recommend just using a file once you defeat an ad. During the encounter, Gorak Tul will also cast Darkened Lightning, which will deal moderate damage to the target and will cleave nearby players. Be sure you're kicking this or just staying spread out. Just keep ads under control and you'll easily defeat the Drust Plague that has infested this manor. Massive shout out to all my Patreon supporters who have gotten early access to this video. Good luck in those keys and have fun. Peace.